The night was quiet, almost painfully still. The soft hum of the city outside his window was the only sound, mingling with the faint rustle of the curtains as the cold wind of early spring brushed against them. He had just climbed into bed after a long day of work, his mind heavy with thoughts of deadlines, schedules, and the monotony of life. He was ready to close his eyes, to let sleep take him away from the world, when something strange made him pause. A faint shimmer appeared in the corner of his room, a glimmer of light that moved like liquid silver. At first, he thought it was a reflection from the streetlight outside, or perhaps the moonlight playing tricks on his tired eyes. But then, very slowly, the shimmer took shape, solidifying into a figure, tall, elegant, and unlike anyone he had ever seen. She stepped into the room with the grace of someone used to walking in palaces, someone who had grown up under the weight of expectation and responsibility. Her skin seemed to glow softly, like starlight captured in liquid, and her eyes were a pale, unearthly shade the night stretched on, silent except for the soft breathing of the princess and the occasional creak of the old floorboards. He sat beside her, unsure how to fill the silence. Every instinct in him told him to speak, to say something comforting, but every word felt inadequate. Instead, he simply watched her. There was a quiet dignity in the way she held herself, even in vulnerability. The glow of her skin seemed to pulse faintly in the darkness, reflecting the uncertainty in her eyes. After a long moment, she spoke again. "I've never felt fear like this before," she whispered, her voice fragile as a petal in the wind. He glanced at her, startled by the raw honesty in her words. She continued, almost talking to herself, "On my planet, I am always surrounded by walls, by guards, by the weight of duty. I have no fear because I am untouchable, but here there is no protection. I am alone." Her confession hung in the air like smoke, wrapping around him in an unexpected warmth. He realized she wasn't just a princess or an alien figure of awe. She was someone who could feel pain, who could be frightened, who could rely on another person for comfort. And she was relying on him. He wanted to reach out but paused, unsure if he would overstep. Then slowly he placed a hand over hers. She didn't pull away. Instead, she looked at him with eyes that were wider, more open than before, and for a fleeting moment, she seemed smaller than the towering, regal figure she usually was. It was in that moment he understood something profound. The most powerful beings sometimes needed the simplest human touch. "I don't know if I can help," he admitted quietly, his own heart pounding. "But you're not alone. I'll stay with you. That's something." She let out a soft breath, almost like a sigh of relief. "That means more than you can imagine, human." Her voice had changed subtly. It was no longer the delicate whisper of fear, but something steadier, something tinged with trust. The room felt charged with emotion, as though the walls themselves were aware of the bond forming between them. He wondered how someone who ruled a civilization so far beyond Earth could find solace in the presence of one simple human. But as he watched her relax slightly, letting herself lean closer to him, he understood that connection did not depend on power or status. It depended on empathy, on courage, and on willingness to care. Minutes passed in quiet companionship. Neither spoke. There was no need. The night itself seemed to listen, the distant hum of the city fading into nothing as he and the princess sat together. It was a fragile peace, easily broken, but it was theirs, and in that silence he began to feel a strange mix of pride and awe. Humanity had given him the instinct to protect, to comfort, to stand with someone when the world seemed frightening. And here, that instinct mattered in ways he had never imagined. Finally, she spoke again, her voice softer now, almost a whisper meant only for him. "I never thought I would feel safe outside my world, but now, with you, I feel it, even if just a little." He felt a lump rise in his throat. Her trust, so freely given, was humbling. "Then I'll keep you safe," he said simply, though he knew that in the grand scale of the universe, he was just one human against endless dangers. "Tonight, nothing will hurt you." Her eyes glistened faintly, not with tears but with emotion, something delicate and human that transcended the boundaries of stars and planets. She reached out and touched his arm lightly, a gesture of gratitude, of reliance, and of silent connection. It was a small act, but it carried the weight of galaxies. And as the hours slipped by, the world outside ceased to exist for them. He realized that bravery was not always loud or heroic in the traditional sense. Sometimes, bravery was sitting in the dark, holding the hand of someone who felt untouchable yet fragile, and simply being present. That night, for the first time, he understood the true power of humanity. It was not in weapons, in strength, or in technology. It was in heart, in empathy, in courage that reached out across species, across worlds to protect and care. And in that realization, the bond between human and princess deepened, unspoken yet undeniable, forging a connection that neither distance nor danger could easily break. The quiet of the night did not last. Just as the princess seemed to relax into a fragile sense of safety, a low vibration shook the floor beneath them. At first, it was subtle, almost a faint tremor that could have been imagined. But then the walls of the room rattled, and the distant hum of the city was replaced by a strange, otherworldly noise. He ran to the window and peered into the dark sky. His heart skipped a beat. Shadows moved among the stars, shapes unlike any human aircraft. They were sleek, angular, and fast, closing in on the city with terrifying precision. The princess stiffened beside him, her glowing eyes wide with fear. "They've found me," she said, her voice trembling. "I couldn't hide forever, they are coming." Fear and adrenaline surged through him. This was not just a test of courage, this was a real battle, one that would decide her life. He realized that the stories of his ancestors, of humanity surviving against impossible odds, were not just tales. The instinct to protect, to fight when it mattered most, was etched into him, and now it had a purpose greater than he had ever imagined. He turned to her, voice firm, trying to mask the tremor of fear in his own chest. "Then we face this together," he said. Her eyes met his, and for the first time he saw the hint of hope amid the panic. She trusted him. She believed that a human, one man, could stand against threats from beyond the stars. She nodded slowly, gathering herself, her royal composure returning even in the shadow of danger. "I have never relied on anyone like this," she admitted softly. "But if I must fall, I would rather face it with you." He swallowed hard. The truth of her words hit him like a wave. The alien princess, accustomed to armies and power, had placed her life in his hands. He felt an immense weight settle on his shoulders, but with it came a surge of determination he had never known. "Stay close to me," he instructed, grabbing a small backpack he had kept near the bed. Inside were emergency supplies, flashlight, first aid, and a few defensive tools he had built as a precaution for this very building. "We can hold them off until help arrives, or until we can find a way to escape." The princess's eyes widened, and for a moment doubt flickered across her face. But then she nodded, and together they moved toward a small, hidden panel in the corner of the room. He opened it, revealing a compact defensive system, laser emitters, energy shields, and a control panel designed for quick activation. It was crude compared to her technology, but it was something, and tonight it would have to be enough. Outside, the shadows grew closer, streaks of alien light cutting through the sky like knives. They were silent hunters, efficient and cold, yet he felt no hesitation. His heart hammered, but his mind sharpened. Every story of human resilience, every lesson of survival passed down through generations, surged within him. He positioned the defensive system, showing the princess how to operate it safely. She watched closely, absorbing every instruction with intense focus. For the first time, the human realized that bravery was not just instinct. It was also teaching, guiding, and standing calm when chaos approached. The princess's trust in him strengthened his resolve. He was not just defending her body, he was defending her trust, her hope, her very sense of safety. The first streaks of alien light struck the city, and the room trembled again. He braced himself, ready to fight, knowing that the night would test every ounce of courage within him. And as he looked at her, standing with a mix of fear and determination, he understood something vital. It was not technology nor sheer strength, but the human heart, the willingness to act, to protect, to risk everything for another, that could stand against even the most formidable threat. And in that moment, the quiet room transformed into a battlefield, a testament to the courage of a human, and the fragile but unbreakable bond between a princess and the man who had become her shield. The first wave of alien attackers streaked across the night sky, sharp beams of light cutting through the darkness. He gripped the small control panel with both hands, sweat prickling his forehead. He could hear the faint hum of energy shields activating, feel the vibrations under the floor as the weapons he had built came alive. The princess crouched beside him, eyes wide but steady, following his instructions. For the first time, she was not the untouchable figure of royalty. She was a student, a partner, a human ally in the fight. "Stay behind me," he commanded, voice firm. His heart pounded, but he forced himself to remain calm. Panic would only make mistakes more likely, and he could not allow that. Not tonight, not when her life rested in his hands. The aliens struck again, faster this time, their ships darting around the city's skyline with precise coordination. But he was human, and humans had something the universe often underestimated: ingenuity. With quick adjustments to the panel, he directed the energy shields to deflect the beams while activating laser emitters aimed at the advancing ships. The system wasn't perfect, and sparks flew as the shields absorbed more than they were designed to handle, but it worked. Slowly, they began to push the attackers back. The princess gasped in amazement. You are brave, human. I never imagined anyone could do this." Her words, though whispered, struck him like a surge of electricity. Bravery was not about having power or armor. It was about standing when everything seemed impossible. He realized then that her awe was not just at the devices, but at him, an ordinary human facing extraordinary danger with courage she had never witnessed. One of the alien ships broke formation, diving toward the building. He pointed to the emergency ladder hidden behind a panel. "We can't let them reach us. Move!" The princess obeyed without hesitation, sliding down beside him. Together, they ducked behind cover as another strike hit the side of the building, shaking it violently. Dust and small debris fell around them, but neither flinched. He caught her arm gently, guiding her to a better position. "You're doing great," he said, though he knew words were almost useless against the roaring chaos outside. But he saw her nod, drawing strength from him as much as he drew from her trust. She was learning that courage could come in many forms, and she had chosen to embrace it. Minutes passed like hours. The city around them remained dark and quiet, unaware of the cosmic battle above. Yet inside that small room, human ingenuity and instinct were holding the line. He adjusted the shield settings again, rerouted power to the emitters, and fired precise pulses at the alien vessels. One by one, they faltered, their formation disrupted by strategies they could not predict. Humans had a way of thinking outside the parameters of logic, and tonight, that creativity became a weapon. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the waves of alien ships began to retreat. Sparks from the panel flickered, and the humming of the system faded. The building trembled one last time, then fell silent. Outside, only the distant stars remained, calm and indifferent to the drama that had unfolded below. The princess collapsed onto the floor, exhausted but alive. He knelt beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "It's over," he said softly. "You're safe." She looked at him with something new in her eyes, a mix of admiration, relief, and gratitude. "You risked everything for me for a human connection," she whispered. "I will never forget this night. You are more than brave. You are extraordinary." He smiled, though his hands shook and his chest heaved. "I didn't do it for praise. I did it because it was right, because no one should face the night alone, not even a princess." And in that quiet moment, surrounded by the echoes of battle, he realized that human courage was not measured in victories alone, but in the willingness to act, to protect, to rise when the odds were impossible. He had faced the unknown, held a world-class princess safe, and survived. And in that, he had proven something essential, that humanity, in its simplest acts of bravery and compassion, could stand tall against the stars themselves. The princess leaned against him, her hand brushing his arm lightly. No words were needed now. They had survived together, and something unspoken, deep, and extraordinary had been forged between them, a bond that went beyond worlds, beyond fear, beyond night itself. The first light of dawn crept slowly through the curtains, spilling soft gold across the room. The city outside remained quiet, oblivious to the chaos that had raged in the sky just hours before. Inside, the air felt heavy with exhaustion, but also with a strange sense of relief. The alien princess sat on the edge of the bed, her glowing skin dimmed now by fatigue, and her eyes looked softer, less guarded than before. She had faced the unknown and survived, but it was more than survival that filled her thoughts. It was the human who had stood beside her, unwavering, calm, fearless. "I never expected," she began, her voice small, unsure how to put the torrent of emotions into words. She paused, biting her lip as if to hold back tears. "I never thought anyone could make me feel safe like this. Not soldiers, not walls, not anything in my world, but you made me feel it." He sat beside her, trying to find the right words. How could he explain that he had acted simply because it was the right thing to do? Because when someone trusted him with their life, he could not ignore it. "I just did what anyone would do," he said quietly, though even he knew that what he had done was far beyond ordinary. "I couldn't let them take you, not when I could help." She looked at him, a faint, almost shy smile crossing her face. "You underestimate yourself, human. You are extraordinary, not because of weapons or skill, but because of your heart. That is what saved me." His chest tightened. Her words were humbling, almost surreal. She, a princess of a far-off world with powers and armies beyond imagination, was calling him extraordinary. Yet in that moment he understood the truth behind it. Humanity's strength was never in numbers or technology alone. It was in empathy, courage, and the willingness to act when no one else would. It was in the quiet determination to stand by someone's side, even when everything seemed impossible. For a while they sat in silence, listening to the distant hum of the city waking up. The weight of the night's events settled over them, but it was no longer a weight of fear. It was a weight of connection. The princess finally leaned back against the wall, letting herself exhale fully, a rare display of vulnerability. She had never shown this side of herself to anyone, and yet here she was, in the presence of a human who had faced the stars and kept her alive. "You are not like anyone I have met," she said softly, almost to herself. "You make me believe that even someone like me can trust, that I am not alone." He reached out instinctively, brushing a stray lock of glowing hair from her face. "You're not alone, not anymore." His voice was steady, though his heart pounded with the weight of her words. There was a deep, unspoken understanding between them now, stronger than any pledge, stronger than any crown or title. It was a bond forged in fear, courage, and shared humanity. The princess smiled faintly, a small, radiant gesture that lit up the room. "Tonight, you saved more than my life. You saved hope. You reminded me that strength is not just about power, but about who stands with you, who refuses to let you fall." He nodded, feeling the truth in her words reverberate deep within him. Humans were simple creatures, yet capable of extraordinary acts of bravery. And tonight, he had proven that even an ordinary human could change the course of someone's life, even a princess whose world stretched across galaxies. For the first time, she allowed herself to relax fully, leaning back against him just slightly, a gesture of trust and comfort that spoke volumes. The night's fear had passed, replaced by something richer, something deeper, something that no distance, no crown, and no alien hierarchy could diminish. And as the sun rose higher, bathing the room in golden light, both human and princess knew that their lives had changed forever. The bond they had forged was unspoken, yet undeniable. It was a connection built on courage, trust, and the quiet heroism that only humanity could offer. And in that quiet room, with dawn spilling across them, they simply sat together, bound by something stronger than words, stronger than worlds. A bond that would carry them through whatever challenges the universe had yet to bring. The city was quiet, still bathed in the gentle light of morning. Outside, the world went on unaware of the cosmic battle that had raged just hours before. Inside the small room, however, the air was heavy with a new sense of calm. A calm born not of victory alone, but of understanding, trust, and a bond that had deepened through danger and fear. The princess sat cross-legged on the bed, her hands resting gently on her knees, her eyes reflecting both exhaustion and wonder. He watched her for a long moment, noticing how different she seemed in the quiet light. Gone was the untouchable aura of royalty, replaced by something more human, more real. Her expression carried a weight of vulnerability, but also a flicker of hope, and he realized that this was the first time he had seen her truly at peace. She had survived, yes, but more importantly, she had learned something essential about trust, about courage, and about herself. "I never imagined," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper, "that someone from another world could make me feel safe, completely safe." She looked at him with eyes that seemed to hold galaxies of gratitude. "You are human, but more than that. You are brave, you are kind, you are extraordinary." He shook his head, smiling faintly, almost embarrassed by her praise. "I just did what I had to," he replied. "It wasn't bravery, it was simple. I couldn't let them hurt you, that's all." But he knew the truth. He had felt fear, yes, but he had faced it anyway. Courage, he realized, was not the absence of fear, but the choice to act despite it. And tonight, that choice had mattered more than he could ever put into words. The princess studied him quietly, as if trying to understand the depth of what he had just said. Then, in a rare gesture of intimacy, she leaned closer. The faint glow of her skin seemed to warm the room, and for the first time he felt a connection that went beyond words. She wasn't just a princess, a being from a distant star. She was someone who had trusted him completely, who had allowed herself to rely on a human when her world offered her no safe harbor. And that trust was precious beyond measure. Humans, she murmured more to herself than to him, have something that even the most advanced civilizations cannot teach: heart, the courage to care, the strength to act without expectation, the ability to make someone else feel they are not alone. She paused, brushing a faint hand across the edge of his. Tonight you showed me all of that, and I will never forget it. A quiet silence followed, comfortable and profound. He reached out and gently covered her hand with his own, a simple gesture yet full of meaning. In that touch there was reassurance, acknowledgement, and a promise. It was a bridge between worlds, a reminder that connection did not depend on power, title, or technology. It depended on trust, presence, and the willingness to stand together in the face of fear. Outside, the sun rose higher, spilling warmth across the city. Inside, the room glowed in the soft morning light, reflecting the bond that had been forged in darkness and danger. Neither spoke for a long time, letting the quiet speak for them, letting the trust and courage between them settle into something enduring. Finally, the princess leaned back against the wall, exhaling fully, her shoulders relaxed in a way he had never seen before. "I never thought I could feel so human," she said, a small smile touching her lips. "But you made me understand that even across galaxies, even with all the power and knowledge I have, there is strength in simplicity, in trust, in connection." He smiled back, feeling a swell of pride and wonder. "That's humanity," he said softly. "It's not perfect, but it can be extraordinary when it matters." And in that shared dawn, human and princess sat together, two beings from different worlds, bound not by duty or obligation, but by courage, empathy, and a bond that had grown stronger than any starship, any crown, any threat. In the quiet morning, they understood that what they had found in each other was rare, precious, and unbreakable, a connection that would carry them through whatever the universe might bring next. The sun had climbed higher now, spilling golden light across the room and warming the pale walls. The city outside was waking, unaware of the battle that had raged over it in the night. Inside, the human and the alien princess sat quietly, the air filled with a calm that came after chaos. The adrenaline had faded, leaving in its place a strange mix of relief, awe, and the soft hum of something far deeper, a connection neither of them could fully explain. The princess rose slowly, stretching her limbs as though shedding the weight of fear and responsibility. She moved toward the doorway, pausing to glance back at him. Her expression was tender, thoughtful, and tinged with gratitude. "I must return to my world," she said softly. "There are duties I cannot escape, responsibilities that call me, but I will carry this night in my heart forever." He nodded, feeling a tightness in his chest. He had expected her to leave, but not this. Her presence had filled the room, had changed the way he thought about himself, and had reminded him of the true meaning of courage. "I understand," he said quietly. "And I will remember too, that night, our night, was something no one can take from us." She took a small step closer, her hand hovering just above his. Then, gently, she rested it lightly on his shoulder. "You have shown me the strength of your kind, human. Not the weapons, not the armies, not the stars themselves, but the heart. I will never forget how you stood with me when everything seemed lost." He met her gaze, feeling the weight of her words sink deep into his chest. "I didn't do it for thanks," he said. "I did it because it was right, because someone needed me and I couldn't turn away. That's all any human can do." A small smile, soft and genuine, touched her lips. She seemed to hesitate, as if wanting to say more but unsure if the moment allowed it. Finally, she whispered, "When we meet again, perhaps we will no longer need words. The bond we share will speak for us." He nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. There was something between them that had been forged in fire and fear, in trust and courage. It was a connection beyond language, beyond time, beyond worlds. It was proof that even in the vast, indifferent universe, humanity could matter, could shine, could touch lives in ways that even the greatest empires could not. She turned toward the doorway, her hand brushing the handle lightly. Then she paused, glancing back one last time. Farewell, human, until the stars allow us to meet again. And with that, she stepped through the door. The shimmer of her presence faded slowly, leaving him in the quiet light of morning. The room felt emptier, colder, yet somehow it was brighter too. Brighter because of what had happened, because of the bond that had been formed, because of the courage and heart that humanity had shown. He sank back onto the bed, running a hand through his hair. His mind replayed the night's events, the fear, the tension, the danger, but also the trust, the connection, and the extraordinary bravery that had carried them through. He realized with a deep and certain understanding that humanity's power was not in domination or conquest, but in empathy, in courage, and in the ability to make someone else feel safe when the universe seemed unrelenting. And somewhere out among the stars, the princess would remember that too. She would carry the proof that even a single human could matter, could make a difference, could stand against impossible odds and emerge unbroken. The morning light grew stronger, spilling over the city and into the room. He closed his eyes for a moment, allowing himself to feel the weight of what had passed and the quiet hope of what might come. He knew their paths would cross again, that the bond they shared could never be erased. And when it did, humanity, his courage, his heart, his unyielding presence, would stand proudly beside her once more, unafraid, unbroken, unstoppable. The night had passed, the danger had ended, but its impact remained. And as he sat in the soft glow of morning, he understood something simple yet profound. The smallest acts of courage, trust, and heart could echo across worlds. And tonight, those echoes had changed everything. He reflected both fear and hope. He froze, unsure if he should speak or move, but before he could gather his thoughts, she spoke. "May I stay with you tonight, human?" Her voice was soft, trembling, and layered with something he could not immediately name: vulnerability. It was a sound he had never associated with royalty, with power, with the alien princess he had met earlier that day in the palace. Back then, she had been distant, untouchable, regal in a way that made him feel both small and honored. But now, here she was, standing in his room in the dead of night, asking for protection, for comfort, for a simple human gesture of kindness. For a moment, he could only stare. He wanted to ask why, what had happened, why she had come here, but the words got stuck in his throat. There was something in her posture, in the way she held herself, that made the question unnecessary. She needed him, and in that need he felt something awaken inside himself, something raw, something human, the desire to protect, to care, to make a difference in the life of someone who mattered. Of course," he said finally, his voice sounding steadier than he felt. "You're safe here." Relief washed over her face in a small, almost imperceptible smile. She stepped closer, and the soft glow around her seemed to fill the room with warmth. He noticed the faint scent of her world, something floral but alien, like a mixture of rain and sunlight and something he couldn't name. It made the air feel heavier, almost magical, and he realized that he was holding his breath, not wanting to disturb the fragile peace between them. She lowered herself to the floor, sitting on the edge of the bed as if unsure whether to trust the comfort of the mattress. He hesitated, then moved to offer her a blanket. She took it with hands that were both delicate and strong, folding it around her shoulders without covering herself fully. Her gaze remained fixed on him, curious and cautious, and he felt a strange connection forming between them, one that was built not on words, but on presence, on shared humanity across worlds. For a long moment, neither spoke. Outside, the city slept, unaware of the silent bond forming in that small, quiet room. He could see fear flickering behind her eyes, mingling with trust, and it struck him that even the strongest beings could be fragile in the right moment. And she had chosen him, a human, to be that moment of safety. As he sat there watching her, he realized that the night had changed. It was no longer just a passage of time. It was a test, a moment of connection, a crossing of worlds. And he, a simple human, had been chosen to stand beside a princess, to protect her, and maybe, in the process, discover something extraordinary about himself. The room felt alive in a way it never had before. The quiet shimmer of starlight from her skin, the gentle rise and fall of her breathing, and the hum of the city outside all combined into a moment of perfect tension, a moment where destiny, chance, and humanity met. And in that moment, he knew that nothing would ever feel ordinary again.